The door opened slowly. Diego stood there in his weekend clothes, clean polo, pressed khakis, that careful smile he wore when neighbors might be watching. But his eyes moved from my face to my small suitcase, then to my barely showing belly, and something shifted. Something cold. "She didn't mention you were coming," he said, not moving aside. Behind him, I heard Mom's voice from the kitchen. "Who is it, honey?" "Your daughter," he called back, still blocking the doorway. Still looking at me like I was something that had gotten loose and wandered onto his property. Mom appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her smile was genuine but nervous. "Maddie, come in, come in. You can stay for a few days while you figure things out." "A few days? Not as long as you need. Not, this is your home too. Just a few days." Diego finally stepped aside, but I had to brush past him to get through. He smelled like aftershave and something else. That particular scent of a man who's already made up his mind about you. "We'll set up the guest room," Mom said, though we both knew it wasn't really a guest room anymore. It was Diego's home office now. His space, his everything. "My name is Madson. I'm 18, and I've learned that sometimes the people who should love you most are the first to teach you that love has conditions. If you believe silence can speak louder than words." Subscribe to Revenge with Suzi. It helps me reach more people and keeps me going to bring you more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, would you have done anything differently? 3 weeks before that doorway moment, I was sitting in my real father's living room. Dad had always been a man of few words, but that day he seemed to have saved them all up just to hurt me. "Pregnant." He said it like it was a diagnosis. Like I'd told him I had something contagious. I'd practiced this conversation in my head 100 times. I'd imagined his disappointment, sure, maybe some anger, but I hadn't prepared for the complete absence of anything resembling love. "At 18, he continued, shaking his head, "just like your mother. That stung more than it should have. Mom had me young, yes, but she'd also raised me, loved me, stayed. Dad, I know it's not ideal, but..." "Not ideal?" He laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. "Maddie, you've just ruined your life, and now you want to ruin mine too." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, not yet, just crack, like ice on a pond when the temperature drops too fast. "I'm not asking you to raise this baby," I said quietly. I thought you should know." He stood up then, walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back like he was addressing a courtroom. "You know what your problem is? You've never had to deal with real consequences. Well, congratulations. Now you get to learn." The silence stretched between us. Outside, Mrs. Peterson was watering her garden, probably wondering why my car was still in the driveway at this time of day. Wondering if everything was all right. "I want you out by tonight," he said without turning around. "Dad, tonight, Maddie, you made an adult choice. Now you get to live like an adult." I packed in 20 minutes, threw clothes into my old high school duffel bag, grabbed my laptop, my birth certificate, the small jewelry box Mom had given me years ago. The whole time I kept thinking he'd change his mind. That he'd come upstairs and say something, anything, that sounded like the father I remembered. He didn't. I carried my bag downstairs and set it by the front door. Dad was back in his chair, newspaper open, reading like nothing had happened, like his only daughter wasn't about to walk out of his life forever. "Dad," I said one more time. He turned the page, so I left, and I understood, maybe for the first time, that some doors close so quietly you don't even hear them. But once they're shut, they stay shut. Mom's house felt different when you were carrying baggage, literal and otherwise. She bustled around, making tea, pulling extra blankets from the hall closet, talking too much and too fast the way she did when she was nervous. "The guest room gets good morning light," she said, smoothing the comforter for the 3rd time. "And there's plenty of closet space. Well, most of it. Diego keeps some of his fishing gear in there, but we can move that." Diego appeared in the doorway. "Don't worry about the fishing gear. It's not staying long anyway." He meant me, of course, not the fishing gear. "Maddie's welcome here as long as she needs," Mom said, but her voice had that careful quality it got when she disagreed with Diego but didn't want to start a fight. "Of course," Diego smiled. "Family first." But I watched him watch me unpack, and I could see him calculating. How much space I'd take up, how much this would cost, how much his perfectly organized life was about to change. That first night at dinner, he asked about Caio. The boyfriend planning to step up? Diego cut his steak with surgical precision. Or is this one of those modern situations where the girl handles everything herself? "Diego," Mom warned softly, What? I'm just saying, back in my day, you got a girl pregnant, you married her. Simple. Kaio had been trying. He'd picked up extra shifts at the warehouse, talked about getting a second job, even mentioned looking into apartments. But we both knew the math. Minimum wage times 40 hours times good intentions still didn't equal enough to support a family. He's doing what he can, I said. Diego chewed thoughtfully. Well, I'm sure it'll all work out. These things usually do. The way he said it, though, like he was talking about a temporary problem that would solve itself if he just waited long enough. After dinner, Mom and I did dishes while Diego watched the news. She kept starting sentences and not finishing them. If you need anything, I know this is hard. Diego just needs time to... Finally, I put down the dish towel and looked at her. Mom, do you want me here? She looked surprised. Hurt, even. Of course I do. You're my daughter. That's not what I asked. She was quiet for a long moment, hands still in the soapy water. I want you to be okay. I want you to be happy. She paused, glanced toward the living room where Diego's voice was explaining something to the TV. I want things to be simple again. And there it was. The truth wrapped in motherly concern. She loved me, yes. But she loved her uncomplicated life more. I understand, I said. But understanding and accepting aren't the same thing. 3 days into my stay, Diego's mask started slipping. It began with small things. The way he'd sigh when I came into the kitchen, how he'd leave his coffee cup on the counter right where I'd set my prenatal vitamins, forcing me to move them. The pointed questions about my doctor's appointments, my dietary needs, whether I'd been researching childcare costs. Just curious, he'd say with that same careful smile. Want to make sure you're prepared. Mom started flinching every time he spoke to me. Like she knew where this was heading, but couldn't figure out how to stop it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. I was making toast, plain wheat bread, the only thing that didn't make me nauseous, when Diego walked into the kitchen carrying a real estate flyer. Found this interesting property, he said, setting it down next to my plate. 2-bedroom apartment, very affordable, perfect for a young family just starting out. I looked at the flyer. The apartment was in a neighborhood I'd drive through with my doors locked. The kind of place where police sirens were background noise and broken glass sparkled on the sidewalks like fallen stars. Diego? Mom said from the doorway. What's this about? Just being helpful. Looking out for options. He poured his coffee, humming softly. Can't stay in the guest room forever, right? Wouldn't be fair to anyone. She just got here, Mom said, but there was no strength behind it. I know, and we've been happy to help during this transition, but let's be realistic about long-term solutions. Transition. Like pregnancy was something I'd get over, like a cold or a bad haircut. Here's not a place for a baby, he continued, stirring sugar into his coffee. All those stairs, no baby-proofing. And the noise. He shook his head sadly. Wouldn't be fair to the neighbors. We lived in a house with thick walls and the nearest neighbor was 50 yards away. But facts weren't really the point anymore. That afternoon, Kaio stopped by after his shift. He looked tired. The kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from working hard for not enough money. Diego made a point of shaking his hand extra long, looking him up and down like he was assessing livestock. Working man, Diego nodded approvingly. I respect that. What's your 5-year plan? Kaio looked confused. 5-year plan? Career goals? Financial objectives? Where do you see yourself when the kid's old enough for school? I'm just trying to take things one day at a time right now. Diego's smile got wider. Sure, one day at a time. That's one approach. Later, when Kaio left, Diego cornered me in the hallway. Nice kid, he said. Reminds me of myself at that age. No direction, no plan, but plenty of good intentions. He paused, studying my face. You know what the difference is between good intentions and actual results? I waited. About 18 years of struggle. That night, I lay in the guest room listening to Mom and Diego's voices through the walls. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I knew the tone. I'd heard it before, in other houses, other families. The sound of a woman choosing her comfort over her child's needs. Some choices make noise when they happen. Others are silent as snow falling. But they all leave marks. By the end of the first week, Diego had stopped pretending this was temporary. We need to talk about ground rules, he announced over breakfast. He'd made a list, actually written it down on a legal pad, like we were negotiating a business contract. Rule 1, guest room is off limits during my work hours. I need quiet space for important calls. Rule 2, kitchen cleanup is immediate. Can't have dirty dishes attracting bugs. Rule 3. Visitors need advance notice. This is still my home. Mom sat stirring her coffee round and round, like she could disappear into the motion. Rule 4. Diego continued. We split utilities 3 ways now. Seems fair, since there are 3 adults living here. She doesn't have a job, Mom said quietly. Then maybe she should get one. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I'm pregnant. Lots of pregnant women work. It's actually healthy from what I understand. Keeps you active. He was right, technically. But we all knew what this was really about. He was making it expensive to want me here. That afternoon, I walked to the library and spent 3 hours applying for jobs online. Retail positions that required standing for 8-hour shifts. Food service jobs that would have me on my feet around fryers and sharp knives. Reception work that paid barely above minimum wage and required professional appearance, which meant clothes I couldn't afford. I applied to 17 places, got 3 callbacks. 2 wanted immediate availability, which I couldn't promise with doctor's appointments. The 3rd was a telemarketing position that paid commission only. When I got home, Diego was in the kitchen making dinner. Something with a lot of garlic and onions that made my stomach roll. Smells amazing, Mom said, though I noticed she was breathing through her mouth. Family recipe? Diego beamed. My grandmother used to make this every Sunday. Big family tradition. He served generous portions to himself and Mom. Set a smaller plate in front of me. Wasn't sure if your stomach could handle it, he said thoughtfully. Pregnancy makes everything so sensitive. I stared at the plate. Maybe a third of what he'd given the others. Thank you, I said, because what else could I say? We're lucky, Diego continued, settling into his chair. Most people our age, their kids are raised and gone. Time to focus on each other again. Travel. Maybe get that boat I've been wanting. A boat? Mom looked surprised. Why not? We've put in our time, raised our children, paid our dues. He took a large bite, chewed thoughtfully. Some people get to enjoy the second half of their lives. Others, he shrugged. Others get trapped. The word hung in the air like smoke. That night, I called Caio. Maybe we should look at that apartment, I said. The one Diego showed you? Maddie, that place is... I know what it is. We can't afford it anyway. Not right now. I know that too. Silence on the line. Finally, Caio sighed. What do you want to do? I don't know. And that was the truth. I was 18, pregnant, and quickly running out of people who wanted me around. I honest to God don't know. After we hung up, I sat in the guest room looking at baby websites on my laptop. Cribs and car seats and tiny clothes that cost more than I'd ever had in my checking account. Lists of things you absolutely needed that added up to thousands of dollars. From downstairs, I could hear Mom and Diego watching some comedy show. Their laughter drifted up through the vents. Comfortable, uncomplicated, free. I closed the laptop and tried to remember the last time I'd laughed like that. Before the pregnancy, before the expulsion, before I'd learned that love was something you could lose without even realizing it was gone. The baby moved then, just a flutter, barely noticeable, but real, undeniable. It's just you and me, I whispered to my still flat belly, and for the first time since this all started, that didn't feel like the worst thing in the world. 2 weeks in, Diego stopped being subtle. This isn't working, he told Mom while I was in the next room, not even bothering to lower his voice. I feel like a stranger in my own house. She's trying her best. Are we running a charity now? I thought we were building a life together. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. She's my daughter, Diego. And I'm your husband. Doesn't that count for something? The next morning, I found a printout on the kitchen counter. Addresses of women's shelters within a 50-mile radius. Each one highlighted with a yellow marker. When Mom came downstairs, she saw me reading it and her face went pale. That's just information. In case you needed options. Whose idea was this? She couldn't meet my eyes. We just want you to know what's available. That afternoon, I called my Aunt Silvana, Dad's sister, the one who'd always been the black sheep of the family for speaking her mind. Can I come stay with you? Just for a few days? What happened? I told her everything. The expulsion, Diego's campaign, Mom's quiet surrender. When I finished, Silvana was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Pack your stuff, she finally said. I'll pick you up in an hour. When the car pulled up, I was waiting on the porch with my bag. Mom stood in the doorway, twisting her wedding ring. Maddie, you don't have to leave like this. We can work something out. No, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. We really can't. Silvana rolled down the passenger window. "Get in, honey." As we drove away, I looked back once. Diego was standing behind Mom in the doorway, his hand on her shoulder. He wasn't smiling anymore, but he didn't look unhappy either. He looked relieved. Silvana's house was small and cluttered and smelled like cigarettes and cat food, but when she made up the couch with real sheets and brought me a cup of tea, it felt more like home than anywhere I'd been in weeks. "Your family," she said, settling into her recliner with her own cup, "has always been good at loving people conditionally. Your dad, your mom, all of them, they love you when you're convenient." "Silvana, I'm not saying they're evil. They're just limited. They think love is supposed to be easy, that if it gets complicated, it must not be real love anymore." I sipped my tea. It was too strong and slightly bitter, but warm. "You want to know the difference between us and them?" Silvana continued. "We know love is supposed to be hard sometimes. That's what makes it worth something." 3 days later, I went back to get some things I'd forgotten. Mom answered the door with a strange expression. "The locks," she said before I could speak. I looked down at my key ring, still carrying the house key I'd had since I was 12. The key that used to mean I belonged somewhere. "What about them?" "Diego changed them yesterday. He said the old ones were sticking." The new deadbolt gleamed silver against the white door. Fresh, expensive looking. The kind that comes with multiple keys and security features. The kind you install when you want to make sure someone can't come back. "Can I come in? I just need to grab my prenatal vitamins and that book I was reading." She hesitated. Actually hesitated. My own mother, weighing whether to let her pregnant daughter into what used to be home. "Diego's not here right now, but he'll be back soon. Maybe you could call first next time, so we can make sure it's convenient?" I stared at that shiny new lock, at my useless key, at my mother's face, apologetic but firm. This wasn't about sticking locks or security upgrades. This was about making sure I understood that I didn't live here anymore, that I never would again. "Sure," I said, slipping my old key off the ring and setting it on the porch rail. "I'll call first." The key made a small metallic sound as it hit the wood. Final. Like a door closing. I never called. Living with Silvana was like being in exile, but comfortable exile. She didn't ask me to pay rent or follow rules or justify my existence. She just let me be pregnant and lost and 18 without trying to fix it. "You're welcome here as long as you need," she said. And unlike when Mom had said the same words, I believed her. I got a part-time job at a bookstore. The manager was a woman in her 50s who'd raised 3 kids as a single mother and didn't bat an eye when I mentioned my situation during the interview. "Can you lift 20 pounds? Can you show up on time? Can you be pleasant to customers even when they're being idiots?" Yes, and probably. "You're hired." It wasn't much money, but it was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt like maybe I could actually do this. Maybe I could figure out how to be someone's mother without having my own mother show me how. But then I had to go back to Mom's house. Not for reconciliation or forgiveness, for paperwork. My birth certificate and social security card were still in the filing cabinet in Diego's office. I needed them for the bookstore's tax forms. I called first, like she'd asked. Got voicemail. Called again an hour later. "Oh," Mom's voice was surprised. "Maddie, I need to get some documents." From the filing cabinet, just 5 minutes. "Well, Diego's at work. I suppose that would be okay." When I arrived, she let me into the office but hovered in the doorway like she thought I might steal something. The filing cabinet was unlocked, same as always. I found my documents quickly, but as I was putting the folders back, I saw something that made me stop. A loan application, recent, in Mom's name, but in Diego's handwriting. I shouldn't have looked. Should have minded my own business, taken my birth certificate, and left. But something about the way Mom was fidgeting in the doorway, the way she kept checking her watch, made me curious. The application was for $15,000. Personal loan, high interest rate. The signature was Mom's, but it was shaky, uncertain, like she'd signed it without reading it. "Find everything you need?" Mom asked. "Yeah." I slipped my documents into my purse, but I was thinking fast. "Mom, do you remember signing any loan papers recently?" Her face went blank. "Loan papers? Diego didn't mention anything about needing to borrow money?" "No, why would—" She paused. "Why are you asking?" I almost told her. Almost pulled out that loan application and showed her what I'd found, but something held me back. Maybe it was the way she was looking at me, suspicious now, like I was trying to cause trouble just for the sake of it. No reason, just curious about something I saw. That night at Silvana's, I couldn't stop thinking about it. $15,000 in Mom's name. For what? Diego had a job. Decent savings as far as I knew. Why would he need to borrow money under her name unless he was hiding something? The next day, I drove by the house during my lunch break. Diego's truck was in the driveway, but so was another car. A red sedan I didn't recognize. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, a woman came out of the house. Young, maybe mid-20s. Pretty in an obvious way. She and Diego stood on the porch talking, standing closer than people talk when they're just friends. She drove away first. Diego watched her go, then looked around the neighborhood like he was checking to see who might have noticed. He was looking the wrong direction, though. He never saw me at all. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes, processing what I'd just seen. The loan, the woman. The way Diego had been so eager to get me out of the house. Some people cheat with money. Others cheat with hearts. Diego apparently was efficient enough to do both. But knowing something and proving something are different skills entirely. And I was about to learn the difference between wanting justice and creating it yourself. I didn't confront anyone, didn't make accusations or demands. Instead, I did something smarter. I made copies. The loan application was still in the filing cabinet. Diego was confident enough in his secrecy that he hadn't bothered to hide it better. Over the next 2 weeks, I made 3 more trips to the house when I knew Diego would be at work. Each time, I found more pieces of the puzzle. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals that corresponded with dates I'd seen the red sedan, credit card bills for restaurants Mom had never mentioned going to. A second cell phone bill for a number I didn't recognize, but the smoking gun was a voicemail I overheard by accident. I was getting the last of my winter clothes from the guest room closet when Diego's phone rang in the kitchen. He didn't answer, but the voicemail played on speaker. "Hey baby, it's me. Can you pick up dinner tonight?" The usual place. "And don't forget, tomorrow's my car payment. Love you." A woman's voice. Casual, familiar. The voice of someone who'd been saying "love you" for a while now. I used my phone to record the playback. That evening, I spread everything out on Silvana's kitchen table. Bank records, loan papers, phone bills, my recording of the voicemail. A complete picture of a man who'd been stealing from his wife to support his girlfriend. Jesus. Silvana whistled low. "How long you think this has been going on?" "Months, at least. Maybe longer." "You going to tell your mother?" I stared at the documents. Mom who'd chosen Diego over me. Who'd changed the locks and asked me to call first. Who'd probably never believe me even with proof. "No," I said finally. "I'm not going to tell her anything." "Then what's the point of all this?" "The loan," I said, pointing to the application. "It's fraud. Using someone else's name to borrow money without their knowledge. That's a felony." Silvana raised an eyebrow. "You thinking about calling the police?" "I'm thinking about making copies of everything and mailing them to the bank that issued the loan. Anonymously. Let them figure out who committed fraud. And if they investigate, then Diego gets to explain to Mom why there's $15,000 missing that she never authorized, and why his girlfriend's been calling him baby while he's been married to her mother." Silvana was quiet for a moment, studying the documents. Then she stood up and got a manila envelope from her desk drawer. "I'll mail it," she said simply. "Silvana, you don't have to—" "Honey, you've got enough on your plate. Let me handle this part." She started organizing the copies with practiced efficiency. "Besides, I've been wanting to do something useful for you. This feels right." She sealed the envelope that night. No return address. No note. Just the evidence, neat and organized, with the loan account number highlighted in yellow. Silvana mailed it on a Tuesday morning while I was at work. 2 weeks later, Silvana got a call from Mom. "She sounds upset," Silvana told me, holding out the phone. "Says there's some problem with a loan she doesn't remember taking out." I took the phone but didn't speak right away. "Maddie?" Mom's voice was small, confused. "Are you there?" "I'm here. The bank called. They're saying I owe money on a loan I never applied for. $15,000. Diego thinks someone stole my identity, but I don't understand how." She trailed off, waiting for me to say something. To offer help, sympathy, advice. All the things daughters are supposed to give their mothers when they're in trouble. "That sounds complicated," I said finally. "The bank wants to investigate. They're sending someone out to the house next week to go over everything. Diego's so upset. He thinks they're going to find other problems, other accounts that might have been compromised. I'll bet he does," I thought. "Well," I said, "I'm sure you'll figure it out." Another pause. Then quietly, "Maddie, I know things have been difficult between us, but you're still my daughter, And if you wanted to come home, Mom, yes, I am home. I hung up and handed the phone back to Silvana. She was watching me with something that might have been pride. Feel good? She asked. No, I said and realized I meant it. But it feels fair. 3 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Diego had moved out. The bank investigation had found irregularities in several accounts, and while they couldn't prove criminal intent, they'd made it clear that someone in that household had been very irresponsible with other people's money. Mom never found out about the girlfriend directly, but she did notice when Diego started getting text messages at all hours and taking phone calls in the garage. She filed for divorce 6 months later. I never told her I was the one who mailed those documents. Never explained how I knew what to look for or where to find it. Some justice works better when it wears no face and claims no credit. My daughter was born on a Tuesday in spring. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, perfect in every way that mattered. Caio held her first, and I watched something shift in his face. Not just love, but recognition. Like he was seeing his future for the first time and realizing he wanted to be worthy of it. He'd been changing over the months. The promotion to supervisor had given him confidence, but more than that, he'd started planning ahead. Taking night classes for his GED, talking about trade school, building something steady instead of just surviving day to day. She's got your eyes, he whispered, touching her tiny hand, and hopefully my stubbornness. Then Silvana held her, then me. When the nurse asked about grandparents, I said we'd let them know when the time was right. Mom asked to visit when she heard the news. I said maybe someday, when things settled down, when there was time. But Caio surprised me a week later. You know I never had a real father, he said while we were watching the baby sleep. Mine left when I was 3. And I spent my whole childhood promising myself I'd be different. You are different. Yeah, but I want to be more than just not him, you know? I want to be the kind of dad she brags about at school, the kind who shows up. He got his second job that month. Weekend shifts at an auto shop where they were teaching him basic mechanics. Not because we desperately needed the money anymore, but because he was building towards something bigger. A future where our daughter would never have to choose between being wanted and being safe. But time has a way of clarifying things. And the longer I waited, the clearer it became that some doors close for good reasons. Some silences are louder than any conversation could ever be. They said it was time to start over without the mess. So I left silence where love used to be. And honestly, it's been peaceful ever since. The baby's sleeping now as I finish this. Caio's at his second job. He got promoted to supervisor last month. Silvana's making soup in the kitchen, humming something old and familiar. Sometimes people ask if I regret cutting my family off, if I miss having grandparents for my daughter, if I worry about her growing up without knowing that whole side of her story. But here's what I've learned. Family isn't about blood or obligation or keeping peace at any cost. It's about showing up. It's about choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. My daughter will grow up knowing she's wanted. Not tolerated, not managed, not endured. Wanted. That's more than I can say for myself at 18. I still have the silence. And it's been enough.